see, that's just the thing. We're just not set up for this kind of weather. It's like 8 a.m. here and it's already 22 degrees or something. It's ridiculous. Tuesday this week, 39 degrees. We moan at 25 degrees. Anyway, that's another story, I suppose, isn't it? So this all happened way back when the 1DX Mark III got released, and it was just, do I get a 1DX Mark III? That was where I was at, and I'd been chatting about it for like about 6 months before that got released, and I was just thinking to myself, do you know what? I've got to get a camera. I've got to get a new one because I need to do things like 4K. I was interested in the 120 frames per second. I was interested in the sort of slightly better photography, given the low light stuff and what have you. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go with the 1DX Mark III. That came out, didn't quite fulfill exactly what I wanted it to fulfill. It was a little bit underkill, as it were. It just didn't have all the features I thought it was going to have on it, or it was rumoured to have on it. But then instantly that came out that R5 was rumoured, and I thought, well, probably going to be a good idea to go mirrorless, given that they're going to eventually stop EF lenses, and I'm going to spend a fortune on lenses for this camera to only find out that they're just sort of like last decade's technology kind of thing. So embarked on this, let's buy some RF lenses, even though I didn't have a camera for them, and go with it from there. Then the R5 came out, and it was difficult to get older one. It overheated. It didn't quite film long enough for me, given that you want to do more than 30 minutes, and there's no real reason not to do unlimited filming now, given that the laws have changed and whatnot. So there I am. I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go? I've got 7 grand's worth of lenses sat on a shelf, basically, that are not really the sort of thing that you can do much with. But then the R5c got announced, and I thought, do you know what? If that's what it's supposed to be, and this is everything that they say is going to be, then I'm in on that, and I'm definitely going with it. And it got released. Obviously, COVID and all that kind of business just basically meant that we were, difficult to get hold of these things. Are they going to be delayed? Is the microchip problem going to impact everybody? I've been waiting months and months and months for a graphics card for the PC and whatnot. Finally got one of those, and it all seemed to sort of eke its way out and be okay. So that then effectively just meant, well, I'm going to plumb for it. So I bought it, and here we are now. We're talking to you through an R5c. So what is it about this camera that plumbed me? What is it about this camera that plumbed me to buy it? What was the selling points that plumbed me to buy it? So let's get out of this heat, because it's like 22 and it's like 8 a.m. as I said before. Let's get out of this heat, get back to the studio, and let's just see what it is that. Let me tell you what it is that made me buy it. Let's do that. So what really made me plumb and jump in with the Canon R5c? Well, a couple of things really, just to kick off with. First was the unlimited recording that this has. And this is by no stretch of the imagination an in-depth technical review. I've had this camera 3 weeks, so this is sort of a 3-week first look at the Canon R5c. But the unlimited recording, that was a thing that basically set me off. Then there was the 8K raw internal recording, and this obviously has the same 2 SD card slots. So it's got a CF Express B and a SD card slot as the R5 does, and so that sort of like interested me, the 8K recording. The fact that 4K is 4K HQ all the time, so this is downsample 8K into 4K, so it's crushed down into 4K, which sort of like makes it high quality 4K rather than just standard 4K. 120 frames a second, and everything from 1 frame a second right up to 120 frames a second. So you've not just got a straight, I could do 120 frames a second, you could do 72 frames a second if you wanted to, or 80 frames a second, or whatever that would be. It just goes up in 1 frame increments. That interested me as well, because I thought, well, that's a really great thing to have, to be fair. The flipping out screen, which is a given for the sort of YouTube stuff that I'm doing. I'm going to need a flippy out screen so I can see what I'm actually recording, that I get everything prepared and in frame and all that kind of stuff. One of the other things that really interested me was the fact that the buttons on this are all numbered. So whilst they've got, on the back, we've got the standard magnification and display and media and cancel and all that kind of stuff, and menu and whatnot. The majority of them, apart from I think media and cancel and menu up here, so apart from say 3 and the record button, they're all customizable. So they've all got numbers on 1 to whatever, and you can go in the menus and you can customize those to do what you want them to do. So they don't necessarily have to be what the standard Canon thinks that you should have them as. They're not necessarily going to be that. They're more likely going to be what you want them to be. So that sort of interested me as well. The form factor, obviously, it being small and not being a pro body style size camera, so it's not heavy. Holding it out on a rig or holding it for an extended period of time, that really interested me because of it being so small. Things that are missing from it: IBIS is missing from it. IBIS was in the R5, but not in the R5c, and I completely understand why. It's not something that I would particularly miss. As a cinematographer, I'd switch it off anyway, because it would be rigged up. If I was using this to do any sort of real heavy motion, it'd be rigged up on a gimbal or a crane or a dolly or some kind of track system or a slider or of some kind. So it'd be stabilized externally by a mechanical object rather than in-body stabilization. It's got stabilization in the lenses, so the L series lenses all come with image stabilization anyway, which is pretty much what we had before in DSLRs, before the R5. So you're not really missing anything out. It's a nice to have, but it's not really, you're not really missing anything out. And from what I have seen, IBIS adds a little bit of wobble in and all that kind of stuff, so then combating all that and all the rest of it. So there are trade-offs to having IBIS anyway. So I wasn't particularly worried about that. The on-off switch, there's been a few people talk about that. So you've got off in the middle, you've got flick it to the left, you've got photo, flick it to the right, you've got video. That's not the first time that's been done. I think the 77D had like a off photo video, so you had to flick through between them to get to actually do that. But really the reason for that is because this is a cinema camera, and it's like their entry-level cinema camera. It's got the cinema camera menu to it, which basically opens up the whole field of options for being able to shoot in shutter angle and so on and so forth, which I suppose if you're not a cinematographer, it takes a little bit of time getting your head around the menu system and how that operates. In terms of actually navigating through it, it's pretty much the same as the photo menu. It's basically an icon and then a series of numbers underneath, which are the menu pages for that menu. But the terminology is different because it's built at cinema people rather than at photo people. The photo menu is the same classic Canon photo menu that we all love and have, and it's just basically what you would expect from a Canon photo camera. In terms of ports on this, it's got the USB HDMI, although it's the mini HDMI. I've never really personally had a problem with this, although I know a few people have break-in and that kind of thing. They do supply a port protector which you stick on the side and it stops that from happening. To be honest with you, I've never really used one of those either. You've got mic and headphone, which is nice to have, so that means you've got mic input and you've got headphone input, so you can listen to what's being actually said rather than just guessing that the sound bars meter bars are picking up what you actually want it to be. Obviously then you've got a light output, so I think that's a flash output, and you've got the standard Canon remote control output as well. You've also got time code option here at the back, on the side, sorry, and that basically allows you to plug in an external time code, it into a time code, and then it matches up and so on and so forth. Again, as I said before, it's a 2-card slot, but this also has a cooling fan on the back, which keeps it cool. And to be honest with you, cinema cameras have generally got fans in anyway. They are recording at high frame rates, usually with high quality, and on massive processors, etc., for long, prolonged periods of time. So they need some way of keeping them cool. So having fans on a camera is not really a new thing. It's just it's a tried and trusted way of making sure that the camera can do what it needs to do. And does it affect sound in particular? I mean, I've recorded this video, or some of this video, on the one wheel outside that you've just seen before we got back to the office. Did it impact the sound in any way? Did you hear the fan going off? Was it like distracting you? I don't think it was, because it's just not distracting you. I'm gonna need to do some more with it, and I'm gonna need to do some more testing with it, just to see where the niche bits are. The one I have found so far is the battery life is significantly less than runtime, in terms of runtime, than say an old 6D Mark II, for instance. So I could shoot, nearly half a day on a 6D Mark II just on one battery, if you're using video or whatever, which is 1080p obviously. This, you're barely getting an hour and a half maybe out of a battery, I would say, before you're switching. And they're not cheap, though. I did buy some non-Canon ones, they were like, and they worked perfectly fine, to be honest with you. I haven't had an issue with them either. I also found that I'd got some high capacity LPE6 batteries. So these were higher capacity than the LPE6 NH, which is what comes with this. And they worked perfectly fine in all modes as well, to be fair. I managed to get to shoot 8K with it, and I managed to get shoot 4K and so on and so forth. So I might chuck them in the bag as well at the same time and see what happens from there. But I'll obviously come back and I'll let you guys know what there is with that. So all in all, I think this has been an interesting buy. It's definitely going to serve me well, I think, and I'll find out what its quirks are, because as we've all got quirks. I'm sure this has got some, and I'm sure that we'll go down that road together and see see how much we can actually get out of this, being as it is touted as their entry-level cinema camera. So with that, hope you did like this first look at the Canon R5c, which is their latest, greatest sort of headline camera at the moment. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.